Fantastic. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us on your Friday morning. We're here today to be able to talk about some of the questions that we've been fielding over the last several weeks, several months, I should say, right, Olivia?
Yep.
And a lot of the questions that we've been getting is, what do I need to do to bring my team back? If I didn't have the employee policies or handbooks or documents before, what type of things do I need to be doing now to make sure that I'm protected going forward? And many people are feeling extremely overwhelmed. We don't know where to start. We're trying to adapt to all of the changes, to PPE, to IPC protocols that have been taking so much time already. And I'm sure that's, with all of the other changes that have been happening when it comes to federal, provincial, state regulations, it's like a full-time job to keep up with everything, right?
It literally is, yeah.
It's been taking us a long time, So there's a lot of worries on practice owners' minds. How do I stay on top of things? Where do I begin? What do I need to do? And the list goes on. So we also need to start thinking not only about what do we need to do right now, but what do we need to do going forward? What are some things that I need to do to mitigate my risk and future-proof our practice? Now, I want to bring an example that we just recently saw. As you guys are probably on many, Facebook groups or dental forums, there's one interesting thing that we saw the other day that took both Olivia and I, kind of scared us a little bit, right? There was a practice owner essentially who mentioned that this really kind of caught our attention, and he mentioned that there was an employee. Let me open this up here. So this employee was asymptomatic. They had been working within the practice for over a week. They had no idea that they were, had COVID, but then tested positive for it. So now this employee has been working with the team and with patients for over a week, unknowingly exposing everybody to COVID-19. And this doctor wrote, I consulted with an HR professional, with a labor law attorney, with our insurance reps all week. It was hell, people. Be prepared. This will most likely happen in your office. Best to be prepared now. Now I just got chills just reading that over again. And this is why we're here talking about this. This is why our message over the past few weeks has been really focusing on a few things. It's primarily been, are you compliant? Do you have the right policies in place? Do you have the paperwork? Is your team trained on this? Have your crisis management playbook, is that ready to go? And do you have a continuity plan that if this scenario that I just read that happened to this one practice who, had to shut their doors down again because of the exposure for COVID-19, are we ready for that? So what we've done today, and we wanted to go over, is the top 5 questions that we've been fielding over the past few weeks to be able to help others go through all of the unknowns and this uncharted territory. So Olivia, thanks for being back here again to provide some wisdom, some insight, and answer these frequently asked questions.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's get started. My employees are really easygoing. Do I really need to worry about being compliant now?
Yeah, in my personal opinion, this is probably the most difficult situation to work with because it feels so wrong to put all of these strict policies and procedures in place when you already have a great team and an even better office culture. However, this kind of setup works until the point of where it doesn't work anymore. So things can be all fine and dandy until someone decides that doesn't work for them anymore. Mm-hmm. And that is the point that you can find yourself in quite a mess. But by that time, any action that's initiated is usually too late, and it's just simply too late to put any policies in place to protect your practice. So what you need to do is make sure that you have the right policies, procedures, and processes in place within your employee handbooks and your external policies, your occupational health and safety manual and your associated documents that go with that, your crisis management documents, your emergency procedures, your IPC, your privacy policies, and of course in your SOPs and your training documents. Now, if you don't have any of this information for your practice, it's important to focus on the nuance of implementation, because if you've got a great team, then you obviously don't want to scare them by by putting a bunch of policies and procedures in place for the sheer point of enforcement. Rather, we are recommending to create these policies and procedures with your team by having them be a part of the process and ask them where they see maybe some operational issues within the practice, or if they see some general hazards or some other assessments that they have from working in their role, and then use that information to create procedures that simply generate mutual expectations for the workforce. In other words, we want to make sure that your employees know that these policies are being put in place so that they know what they can expect from the practice owner, as much as they're put in place so that you have consistent expectations for your employees as well.
Well said. Very, very important for, like you were saying, just to have that continuity, making sure the expectations, everything is clear. And that way that covers not only, the performance wise, but making sure that going forward, we're following all of this and we're being compliant and keeping everybody safe. So the next question is, it's impossible for me to keep up with all of the legislation when I'm already just trying to keep up with keeping our patients and getting back the business back to what it used to be before COVID-19. So what resources are available for me to look at so in that way I can have what I need?
Right. This is probably the most cumbersome task for many business owners, not just in the dental profession, but all business owners, especially in times like this where you've already got so many other things to worry about. So I guess the easiest place to start would be to look at your government websites. So you're going to need to look at your city, municipal, or county, your province or state, and your federal legislation websites fairly frequently in order to find out if labor laws have been changed or if any new provisions have been made that you would need to know about. And many times these situations are newsworthy, so you might actually see some information about labor law changes in your region within your local newspaper, and then you can go to your government website and read more in depth about how these changes will affect you. So, for example, just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen some pretty massive changes to the Employment Standards Act of Ontario in regards to temporary reduction of wages or reduction of hours due to COVID-19, not actually triggering a constructive dismissal claim as of May 29th of this year. Additionally, Alberta has seen an update to the personal and family responsibility leave in that the length of the leave is now flexible based on the guidelines from the provincial chief medical officer. What else? In BC, not necessarily COVID related, but the personal illness or injury leave has been updated to reflect 3 unpaid days of job protected leave on an annual basis for those that have worked past the probationary period. Even in the states. So New York State, we just saw on Monday that the legislation was signed to extend the deadline for filing property tax abatements all the way till the middle of July. What else? In California, there were some pretty massive changes to the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification, or the WARN Act, regarding what is considered practicable notice due to COVID-19. Or in Missouri, we saw some massive changes to legal proceedings in regard to punitive damages that will begin to apply late in August of this year. So I guess long way around what I'm trying to say is I get all excited and ramble on about these changes. As a business owner, you already and quite obviously wear many hats. So I bet there are many dentists who are practice owners that end up spending more time working on HR and dealing with employment issues and general complaints and paperwork than they do seeing patients. And this is truly just going to get worse as we continue to navigate through this eradication of COVID-19. So long story short, to get to the answer of your initial question, is that you need to ask yourself whether your time is better spent on seeing patients so that you can continue to bring in revenues for your practice, or would you rather spend countless hours researching labor laws that are written in legalese and basically need a translator while not bringing in a single dollar of revenue? So that's the question that these practice owners need to ask themselves in order to answer your question.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And, there's at least probably 15 or 20 different things that I know from my personal, experience working as an office manager. I could easily fill those 20, 30, 40 hours of doing research and putting the policies together. I could have generated thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for the practice. Yeah. So just making sure that, again, primary focus right now is just getting the business up, recuperating the lost time, taking care of our patients, making sure that our PPE and our IPC is taken care of. But at the same time, this is also part of compliance. So how do we do that balancing, that juggling act, or so to speak, right?
Absolutely.
So that leads me to the next question. My friend is also a dental practice owner. So they just tell me what their consultants suggest to them. So why do I need to do my own compliance check?
Yeah, this is probably both my favorite and my least favorite question wrapped up into one package. So the standard HR response to most things, as most of you have probably learned, is it depends. So when your friend who has their own practice has an issue taking place, it's awesome that they are getting some professional guidance on how to proceed with their employees. However, without knowing the particular details of each and every experience, it's truly impossible to kind of create a generalization for these responses. So with every employee grievance or issue, we need to look at a number of factors, including, but of course not limited to, how long this employee has worked in the office, what is their role, what was in their job description, what's in your original employment agreement, what's in your handbook, are they maybe a part of a protected class? Now, thanks to COVID, we need to look at things such as, do they have kids at home that don't have adequate childcare or school? Or do they live with someone who is severely immunocompromised? Or do they have an undisclosed medical condition that we need to, kind of tread carefully around so as to not discriminate against them? And how do we provide accommodations in the workplace? And of course, that's going to affect other employees in the workplace. We need to do this up to the point of undue hardship and so on and so forth. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, just because your friend is getting some advice for a particular situation, unless you have the exact same issue and are in the same location with the same legislation, then the answer to your questions or grievances or issues could be drastically different from what you're being told by your well-meaning friend. So as with most situations, we can make some form of generalizations, but before you take any action, you definitely need to seek guidance from a human resources or employment law professional for your own situation taking place.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not one size fits all.
Exactly.
It's everything, like you said, making sure that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before we make a decision that could have severe ramifications for our business. And it's honestly, it's not worth it. You've invested way too much time, energy, resources, money, and blood, sweat, and tears, and everything else in between into this business. So making sure that we're making the right decisions at a time like this is extremely key. And it kind of reminds me of, for example, if I had a symptom, I'm not going to do my own Google research and become ask a friend of a friend or check on Google or WebMD on what's going on and make a decision on my health based off of that. I want to go and make sure I got the right tests, I've got the right information, so my doctor can provide a good treatment plan for me.
Exactly.
So here's the next one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I've recalled my team now, and operations are slowly increasing. But what do I need to do to prepare for now? And what if there's an exposure within the office of COVID-19 at my practice?
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, super exciting that we're getting back up and running. That's obviously been no easy feat throughout the last 3 months. Simply just trying to get PPE has been a nightmare. So here's the thing. We can't sit back and celebrate for too long. So we need to ask, are you fully prepared for if there was a workplace exposure for COVID-19 in your practice? So what are you using for reporting forms? What about those housekeeping checklists? Basically, what are you doing right now to prove that if there was a COVID-19 exposure in your workplace, that you haven't been negligent in any way, shape, or form? And then, truthfully, I know we've all got our COVID blinders on right now, but we have to look beyond COVID. So what are you doing to maintain your employees' health and safety in the long run? 2020 is hitting small businesses so hard with so many situations unfolding. And of course, now we need to worry about civil unrest in a number of cities across North America as well. So what will you do if your employees are unable to get to the office and back home in a safe manner? Do you have your backup plan ready for last minute coverage if this was to happen? Or do you have those emergency closure procedures in place if the safety of your employees or your patients was at risk due to nearby rioting or looting? So simply, as small business owners, we need to be at the forefront of social justice movements. And we can start to do our part by ensuring the health and safety of our employees in the workplace, up to and including taking reasonable measures such as short-term practice closures if there was a threat to the safety. And a threat to a safety can take place in a number of different forms. It could be a flood, it can be a snowstorm, it could be a wildfire, or it could be a riot. So as much as you probably just want to book up your hours with patient care, you can't reasonably do this at this time without sacrificing some other areas of the practice unless you have someone to take care of your HR. So as much as we like to lean on our office managers and our lead admins to do the HR, they're already swamped with so much work to actually bring in revenues at the practice. So we don't want to slow their momentum with internal management tasks if you can avoid that by utilizing the services of an external consultant. So I guess, long story short, back to your original question there, in regards to that workplace exposure, it all comes down to, in the event of any litigation in the future, you need to prove that you weren't negligent in any way. So making sure that we have those reporting forms, that things are being consistently filled out, that we have those practices and policies and procedures in place, and that we're going above and beyond and not just doing the minimum requirements.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the key thing that you mentioned is just, it's making sure that we've got a protocol, that we have it written down. It's not just verbal, because we've got a saying in HR, if it was never documented, it never happened. So if, long-term down the road, we need to make sure, again, like Olivia was mentioning, if there was ever a situation that arose where there was an exposure and there was an audit on the practice, what kind of proof do we have? Do we have those documentations to show that we've done a hazard assessment? We've done the exposure like trainings, recent IPC training with everybody's acknowledgement and their sign off on it. So this is, goes beyond just making sure that we've got the right PPE. That's, 80% of the work, but then 20% is making sure that the team's trained on it and they've signed off on that.
Exactly.
Can't stress that enough. So I guess that kind of leads us to the next question. Like, how do I know, or how can I find out if I'm compliant, or if I'm still being compliant, and if I have the right documents, that was created back in 2009, or am I still compliant with those documents now?
Right. First thing you can do is check out our online compliance check so that you can get a preliminary compliance score and see where you're at in regards to best practice. So, for example, maybe you have an employee handbook, you've got your external policies, you've got your occupational health and safety documentation, but maybe it hasn't been reviewed or updated since you first got it created 15 years ago. So in that case, you're likely not compliant, even though you do technically have these things in the practice. Or even if you had these things created in 2017 or 2018, they still need to be reviewed on an annual basis. Now, I've been working in HR for over a decade, and truthfully, it's still shocking to me even how much these employment standards change over a very short period of time, especially in some specific regions. Then, you mix in a global pandemic and it is absolute mayhem. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
But overall, we've got the link posted, so you can click on the link to do our compliance checklist, or I think we're going to post it in the comments. And then we'll even do a complimentary check-in with you for about 10 to 15 minutes based on the results of your compliance check, and let you know where your practice is at risk and where you need to increase or review the breadth of your policy. And I think the best part about what we offer in comparison to some other services out there is not only will we let you know where your shortcomings are, we're also going to provide you with some assistance in getting these things in place within the practice, and not just telling you what you need to do, but creating those implementation calendars so that these policies, procedures, and best practices within your office don't just sit on a shelf collecting dust, but that they also don't take hundreds of hours of your precious time to implement, because we know you're busy people. We know you have 1,000 things that you need to be doing. HR is not one of them. So we don't want to make it more cumbersome for you in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, I love it when we show our clients the HR like year at a glance, where they see, okay, come October, this is when we're going to be doing the checks to make sure everybody's CPR is done, nothing's expired, vaccination records. So we're on top of that. And the moment we show them this, like, their shoulders and their stress level just goes down.
Because that's just it. Every time it's like, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to fit it in? And it's, we've got you covered. That's what we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we can't stress this enough. And Olivia, I think you brought this out really nicely about how just over the last 3 months, we've seen so many changes. COVID-19 changed our industry overnight. And it's been a whirlwind of a few, of months. And I know that's going to continue on over the next few months and, for the foreseeable future. And it's going to continue beyond the scope of, now we're in this phase of returning to work. Now we need to prepare for the next phase. What does that look like for my business? So in that way, I can keep the momentum going and I'm prepared for the future. So we want to be able to help you do that. And that's why we've created our COVID not complaint night, the compliance quiz. So in that way, we'll post the comment in the comment section so that you guys can go online, take that quiz. It's what, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Going through a series of questions just to make sure you have those certain policies, whether that's the employee handbook or an external policies, and making sure that you have all of the supporting documents for those specific resources. So we want to be able to help you guys. That's why we've been on here streaming, doing webinars. We've done over 50 webinars to be able to support our community as we're going through these tough times together. And we want to make sure that your HR, your health and your safety programs are up to date, they're compliant. So in that way, your business, your team, and your patients are protected. So if you'd like to take the quiz, make sure to access that in the comments here. Once we're done, we'll post that. We know you guys have a lot on your plate. So if there's anything that we can do to be able to help offload the HR and the risk management for you, that's what we're here to help. So thanks, Olivia, again, for answering all of those questions. I know this has been frequent over the past couple of weeks. You and I think yesterday there was a couple questions couple questions we already had from yesterday. So hopefully this helped you guys out, but please feel free to reach out if you do have any other questions going forward. So thanks so much. See you guys.